There was a lot of speculation over whether I rode with like my straps were loose or my boots are untied, or, and I just never said anything. But what would really happen is those base plates would break in the heel because, the all bindings kind of flex in the heel when you turn and torque on them enough, and those things would just snap. And they generally snap in a day. And so you would only be able to ride a set of bindings for a few weeks before they became like unsafe. But once they broke, you could tweak a little harder.
Welcome to Going Off, a podcast about snowboard history.
As the early days of snowboard culture slide into the past, we're documenting its oral history.
We're tracing back what made it so strange and explosive, why it changed all those lives and still bonds people for life.
From the history of snowboard fashion to how halfpipes were born.
From the birth of jibbing to movies, music, and magazines.
Each episode drops in on something new. I'm one of your hosts, Trisha Burns.
And I'm your other host, Jennifer Shurowski. We've traveled the world together for decades, riding and just living the way of life we call snowboarding. And now we're ready to get in the Wayback Machine. I think we're recording now.
Let's fucking go off.
Oh man, I don't know what's going on. All right, Trisha, welcome back to the United States. Where are you at on the arc of feeling normal to like jet lagged as fuck?
100% anywhere I go, with or without sleep.
What are we going to talk about today?
Yeah, so today we're going to talk about this legendary image of Jason Ford doing a tuck knee over a snowcat. This was shot by Rod Walker at Mount Baker in Washington, and this is like the spring of 1990. It ran in Transworld Snowboarding in the April 1991 issue, and it's on page 47 for those of you who still have it. If you do have that issue, please share it with us.
Jason's got it.
Yeah, but he does, yeah. And was it also a poster? We tried to figure that out because you had a poster on your wall, right, Jen?
Well, I had this hanging on my wall. People can fight me in the comments, but I swear it was a poster because I had the same jacket that that Jason's wearing in the photo. And I don't know that I had access to magazines, so I thought it made sense to me that maybe like if you bought Burton gear that it came with it so that was my memory.
Yeah.
But we asked Todd Coleman, who's the Burton archivist, and he doesn't remember that being a poster, nor does Jason. So some things remain a mystery about snowboard history, But yeah, we wanted to talk about this image and sort of take you into that world because it's just a crucial formative time in the history of snowboarding. But before we do that, let's quickly take a minute to describe this image. So Jason Ford, who we're going to talk to in a few minutes, we're excited to talk to him. He is riding a Craig Kelly Air. It's the one that is kind of dark purple and magenta and black, like brushstrokes. I think it's the year after the ketchup and mustard board. But so he's boosting over a snowcat. He's doing a tuck knee. His back knee is basically glued to the board. His back is arched. He's boned out to the max, like perfect body position. The background's pretty dark because it's trees in the background. So you can it highlights, there's like snow flying. So it feels super explosive. The cat driver is leaning out the window, like looking up at him, like, what? And it's, in hindsight, like, yeah, that was obviously staged, but it didn't feel like it at the time. And it just felt really cool. Like it felt like an epic moment, like kind of more storytelling going on than your average photo of the era. The colors are super vibrant in this photo. Jason's in those famous yellow Burton pants that were ever present during this era. He's got it linked up with like the rest of the pastel kit that was on offer that year. So it's a Burton pullover. This is the jacket I had too. It had like a mint green body, and then pastel purple like shoulders and kind of top of torso, yellow baseball hat that matched his pants he's wearing. He's got reflective Oakley blades. He's tan, he's toned, he's tweaked. It's just the energy of 1990 and what we're calling the boned out era is just like kind of exploding out of this image. And by the way, like you mentioned it, but this is fodder for so many snowboarders' daydreams during this time. Like we posted it on our Insta and so many people just chimed in like, oh, I had that on my wall. This was so sick. Like Rob Fagan, who's an Olympic snowboard coach, said it. Someone named Devin Walsh, one of the best to ever do it. Devin said that was one of my favorites. It was hanging on my wall, 3 exclamation points. So, and a snowboarder named me. I had it on the wall. It's always good to remind ourselves too, like this is a period without ubiquitous media. So
Yeah.
images of what you were into, especially when it was underground at like snowboarding at the time, finding images of what you were into, like we weren't getting it mainlined in rad inspiring images mainlined into our eyeballs 24/7. So
Yeah, totally.
finding images of what you were into was something special. It was like, I'm going to put this up on my wall. I'm going to like worship at the altar kind of.
Well, also it was just less. There was less, there's like
Yeah.
5 images, or like a magazine had what, 25, 30, 50 pages, I don't know. And so
Yeah.
each of those pages held like your attention for so much longer and meant so much more and just kind of impacted you in a much bigger way.
Yeah. It
To
held
pull it out.
power.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
really.
So what did you have on your wall? Because I remember you talking once about, did you have Tom Sims hanging on your wall?
No, I had Pee Wee Herman hanging on my wall, the, poster. But, I my brother's room was, like, kind of packed with, there was, like, a poster of Damian Sanders, like an OP poster, and I
Amazing.
remember being like, "That girl is so good." And then I realized that Damian was not a female. Um Just because like, the long blonde hair, the,
Yeah.
like, skin
The s
tight body
the
glove suit,
signifiers were there.
tweaking,
Yeah.
like, all that,
Mhm.
but yeah, that's one of the ones I remember on his wall, but his room was just cluttered and plastered with tons of skate and snowboard paraphernalia and gear and,
Yeah,
classic
Doug's room was the altar.
Doug Den, yeah.
Yeah.
But mine was a little bit more, refined.
Yeah, yeah, refined PB. For those not intimately familiar with like who exactly Jason Ford is, beyond just being like the golden boy and Oakley Blades at the heart of this
Yeah.
image. At the time, he's this young up and comer from Southern Vermont. He was 19 when the photo was taken, still a teen. He's just gotten on the Burton A team, which was a huge deal then. I mean, it still is, but yeah. And this image was taken at Burton's annual end of year shoot. So, like you said, it was Mount Baker. It's spring, it's slushy, it's sloppy. That's kind of the vibe going on. And who else was there? It was Craig Kelly, Keith Duckboy Wallace, Mike Jacoby, Jeff Brushy. These are Jason's contemporaries, basically, and they've all got their hand on the wheel, kind of steering snowboarding together.
Yeah, it's cool. Just to talk about that 18, that Burton 18, when I talked to Mike Jacoby a little while back, he was saying like he got a contract to ride for Burton, and basically they like put him on an airplane in 2 weeks and flew him out to like meet the rest of the team. But like in our memory or our experience looking at that team, it felt like it was this like group of friends and homies that were like riding together and chill and smooth groove and like, but really, a lot of them were strangers and became best friends through kind of these photo shoots and moments.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Um,
amazing.
but yeah, so Jason Ford, who we're talking about, had a like, really storied career in snowboarding. As a Southern Vermont snowboarder, I remember him like coming back and coming to some of the Green Mountain series, and we're like, oh my gosh, it was like the legend
He's a
had
star.
arrived. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, he's had a big career in snowboarding, but also in business. He was around to launch a lot of like important brands in snowboarding. His riding legacy is this like smooth, stylish, powerful, and kind of like cutting edge at the time, I feel like.
Yeah.
And then, he had like 18 magazine covers. He's in a bunch of videos, a couple we just mentioned. He left Burton, which was, the end all be all, to start and help launch Ride Snowboarders with Tim and Stephanie Pogue, and kind of like on that team of the super team of Russell Winfield, Jake Blattner, Rowan Rogers, Dale Rayberg. Jason went on to help launch Solomon Snowboards with Brad Stewart. He took an active role in product development at all of these places, pushing, the technology of snowboarding. He
Yeah,
also
he knows
co
so much
Yeah.
about gear. It's amazing.
Yeah, we're just learning about the stuff we rode. He's like, "I developed it, you ding dongs."
Yes.
But yeah, he took an active role, in product development at these places, and he helped co-found Montoya, which was one of the industry's first women-specific outerwear brands. They also co-founded the Snowboard Journal magazine, not to be confused with Frequency, the Snowboarders journal, but something that came a little bit before this. And
Yeah.
then also, since we're talking about this image specifically, I guess we should talk about Rod Walker. When I started digging up some of these old photos, I'm like, how do we not know who Rod Walker is? Because those
Yeah.
early Burton catalogs were peppered with his images. Some of the most iconic 80s, 90s images were from Rod Walker. And then you go to his website now and it's like, he's just like a professional photographer in all the other avenues,
He's
like
not in the
portraits.
scene
Yeah,
anymore.
not at
Yeah.
all, which, a lot of our old heads and snowboard photographers, they're still somehow adjacent, even if they've kind of moved on. But
Yeah.
he was a talented photographer from Colorado. He was a skier, which is sort of interesting to note.
Mhm.
And he was one of Burton's anchor photographers in the late 80s and 90s. He specialized in that guy in the sky photography, which, now we're always like, oh, the Getty image guys always just shoot the guy
It
in the sky.
was.
But when you look back at some of our early images in snowboarding,
Yeah.
it was a lot of guy in the sky. I've seen some Tindies on covers of magazines.
Ooh.
But that was sort of his thing. It was big at the time, and Burton liked those images specifically to show the equipment. So especially if you're
Yeah.
doing a catalog shoot, you get to see up front and close that they have duct tape on their boots.
Because you couldn't zoom in. Yeah, yeah, totally. And everyone sort of says the same thing when you're like, "Yeah, it was shot by Rod Walker." People are like, "Who?"
We'll see.
So we'll talk to Jason a bit about it later. But by all accounts, he sort of Rod Walker sort of faded out of shooting snowboarding not too long after this. So,
It was just a
um,
day job for that guy.
day job, getting it done. Yeah. Anyway, let's really swim back through the primordial stew and kind of get into that era of snowboarding, because I always think it's kind of fun to, I don't know, just to remember what was happening during the 1989-90 season. So picture this. George H.W. Bush was prez. The Berlin Wall falls in November of '89, symbolically ending the Cold War and kind of opening the doors for German reunification.
And Hasselhoff is on top of it doing
Oh
his
yeah, I forgot
piano
about that.
scarf dance.
And the Scorpion song, "The Winds of Change," is just getting played nonstop over all the coverage. The Tiananmen Square protest in China, that went down. A lot of pro-democracy energy kind of happening all over the world. Feels a little different than right now. Movies, Dead Poets Society dropped, and just a shit ton of sequels. Lethal Weapon 2, Ghostbusters 2, Back to the Future 2. We're already just regurgitating stuff we knew worked last time over and over. Music, pop music stations playing Madonna's album Like a Prayer, Milli Vanilli, girl, you know it's true.
Lip sync.
The lip syncers. More interestingly for us in the underground world, the Nine Inch Nails album, Pretty Hate Machine, the album was huge that year. BC Boys, Paul's Boutique, De La Soul, 3 Feet High and Rising, like some really big ones dropping that year. So that's kind of the vibe sort of in culture. And then in the world of snowboarding, this is early. This is early in the arc of snowboard culture. There's definitely snowboard movies, but it's still kind of before video parts at scale where you're like, I need to spend all winter filming my part. And riders are sort of traveling around on the contest circuit. They're doing World Cups, like they're heading to Breckenridge for the World Championships. And I would say the holy grail of being a pro snowboarder in 1990 is still kind of winning competitions and getting cover shots in magazines, basically.
Yeah, definitely. And the magazines on the scene are pretty new. Snowboarding's very first magazine, which is absolutely radical, launched in 1985. So they quickly changed their name to ISM International Snowboard Magazine to put snowboard in the title of the magazine.
Yeah.
Fall of 1987, Transworld releases its first issue. So this 88, 89 season is also when resorts that were holding out kind of open their doors to snowboarding, or I guess cave in, I guess, and allow it. They're like, we're
This
opening
is the season sort of before the photo was
yeah,
taken.
88, 89.
Yeah.
So, this is kind of like all leading up into this moment. Squaw Valley, California, now Palisades, opens its doors in 88, 89. Mammoth Mountain in California, Vail, Colorado, Sun Valley, Idaho, and Snowboard, Utah. They are opening up the doors in 88, 89. It's also relevant in this photo is that in 1990, Burton Freestyle bindings are released. We did a full episode on the bindings, so if you haven't listened to it, do a deep dive on the history of bindings. But this is a huge shift in snowboarding to a more freestyle focus versus racing, and the product that is like addressing the requirements of wanting to tweak and grab your board and bone it out and all that. And so, that 1990 freestyle binding kind of redefines the sport. And the following year, they released that bone out strap, which is got a hole in it. And when we talked to Chris Doyle, who was R&D for Burton forever, he talked about how that was specifically kind of created for Jake's foot and how he had like a bone spur on the top, and that helped like kind of alleviate the pain.
The don't get a bone spur strap. I've had a bone spur in that place, and it sucked. Yeah, because your heel strap goes right over the bridge of your foot, and if your boots are too soft or you have like a little pressure point, you start getting a hot spot, and then your body is just like, we
will grow a new bone.
Yeah, and it's like it takes so long to get rid of it. Oh, that's super interesting that it was like Jake's pain. We're making a whole strap to avoid this issue.
Yeah.
Movies of the day, Totally Bored. The very first the first video in the TB series is released at that time. Fall Line Films, Snowboarders in Exile, Burton's iconic Chill. They're all dropping, during this season. But much of the cultural output at this time is really great photography of snowboarders catching air and
tweaking.
And the images, I was thinking a bit about it, and it feels like the images coming out of the boned out era, they have this like dreamlike quality kind of, because they just sort of transport you back in time and the world feels really like different, it like things look different, they're wearing different stuff and they're riding differently, and it's not just, it doesn't just feel like a less evolved version of what we're doing now. Like if you looked at some of the photography from like 2000 or something, just basically 10 years later, sort of feels like now, but back then it just feels like a different world. At this time, freestyle snowboarding is sort of settling into itself as like a thing, basically.
A thing that's different, from like racing.
Exactly.
Even competing.
Even competing. And there's a huge focus on where you grabbed your board and like what your body position was and how hard you like put the sauce on it, because that's sort of all you had. Like you're going kind of small in a way, and the equipment is pretty limiting because it's like heavy and it's still evolving. And so you have as a rider, you have these very narrow guardrails basically. And it's really kind of beautiful to see all the creativity that could kind of happen within that. And it's such a beloved time in snowboarding. People are always saying things like, that's when it was real, not like now when people are doing gymnastics. So there's a big sort of hearkening back to this time. And I don't know, I do feel like you kind of need, like if you look at this image and you feel nothing, you need a defibrillator because it is, I think, objectively rad and has style. But what do you think it is about this era that people are so in love with? Do you think it's just like pure nostalgia?
I think it was a time when you could see something in a magazine that's super relatable. Like you could do that, maybe not over a cat and like off a huge jump, but it's something you could aspire towards. Where nowadays, the stuff that the snowboarders are doing is so gnarly and so impressive, but it's really like out of the wheelhouse of 90% of snowboarders, but like looking at that image of Jason or like those super tweaks of, brushy in those times, you're really like, oh, if I just like get my bindings and like customize them this way, I could also get my knee to the bottom of my board, like I just felt like relatable and beautiful and like explosive. And I don't know, just it was more about how you did a thing than what you were doing. You know, like everyone's doing a frontside air, but just the way you do it and the as much as you tweak it, that's what kind of made it more special than the other one, you know?
Totally. I think there's a simplicity to it that
Yeah.
does make it sort of immediately understandable. I was trying to find a good comparison that could help us sort of understand or set it up, and I was wondering, like, is an image like this, is it the mid-century modern design of snowboarding? You know, like how in architecture and design, everyone's just like harkens back to like what they were making 70 years ago. Like, is this is like this image the Eames chair of snowboarding? Because if you think
Yeah.
of like how there's been all this technological advancement since that is still usable and makes sense and is, you know, like we're not trying to discount any of that, but
Yeah.
that there was a period when style was the most important thing in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And anyway, I'm excited to talk to Jason about it and see what he thinks too, because I don't want to do is just have this be like a nostalgia trip. I think there's
Yeah.
something kind of more at play. You know, you've got to kind of crawl before you can walk. And I think what was going on, you know, during this period is they were really defining the style that was gonna, you know,
And, like,
where we
pushing the envelope on it really because, you know, just with, like, the binding and with the equipment, kind of those advances in it and the soft boots, like, you really could tweak stuff to the max, dare I say?
yeah. Bone it out. Hence the name. All right. Well, we'll see what Jason has to say about it. We're excited to talk to him. Jason Ford, welcome to Going Off. Thank you for joining us today. We thought we could kick off just by starting at the beginning. Why don't you tell us about that day the photo was taken and just take us through it.
Yeah, so, obviously the photo is the Tuckney over the snowcat. It's, from Mount Baker. I had to look back at my notes to get the year right and compare some other events that were going on, but
Yeah.
it was taken in
Yeah.
April 1990. Rod Walker was the photographer, and, the snow was not good that day. It was slushy, and we're trying to figure out what to do, so ultimately they pushed up a jump, and we're just hitting a jump, and so there's a bunch of straight air photos that got run as ads in catalog shots. And then that one, they pulled the snowcat underneath and everybody hit it. But, my shot's the one that seemed to get the most coverage.
That
Um,
was the one.
that was
Hmm.
the one. And, it's funny. The thing that makes it is the cat driver. And I don't know his name, but him looking out of the window
Yeah.
and looking up at me as I'm going over the top made that image extra cool.
Yeah, he's like, "Holy shit." Like, he did a good job acting, you know? You can feel it, you can feel it.
Yeah, was it
Yeah.
staged with the driver? Like, kinda, like, lean out and do this, or was it a little more authentic? Or did you not know?
Uh, I had no idea he was gonna look out the window. I mean, obviously, I knew the cat was there,
Yeah.
and it's not a you jump, you know? It was pretty easy to go over the top of it. Um, but yeah, we were just, making the best of spring conditions, and that was a fun shot that I don't know whose idea it was to put the cat in the way. But, it's one of those days where the cat pushed up a jump, and it probably took him 15 minutes. It wasn't, there wasn't a lot of engineering that went into stuff back then.
Yeah.
You just packed a ramp and hit it. And so that one had a good landing, and then he put that thing in the middle, and over the top I went.
What was the vibe with the team like back then, like that Burton team and being on a photo shoot?
Yeah, were you guys competitive?
Maybe a little. I wouldn't say we're super competitive. Everyone looked up to Craig, so he was the man. And then, Brush had, a great year, that year. I think that might have been the year he was world half pipe champion.
Okay.
Um, and those guys had filmed in Baker the year before for Chill, if you remember that.
Of course.
Um, so, we all had that sort of idea of what was gonna, what's happened in the past and when we got there. And then, you sort of get the conditions we got. The competitiveness amongst the team, it was I think everyone was just trying, at least from my perspective, first I was just happy to be there, happy to be invited to be part of the mix. And then, for me, competitive was just always against myself. So it's like, can I ride
Yeah.
my personal best today?
Yeah.
And then, see how everyone else does. And that's what we get. Um, it wasn't, to me, it wasn't like, oh, Craig did that. Now I've got to one up him.
Yeah.
It's because everybody's bag of tricks was kind of different at the time, and obviously compared to today's bags of tricks, a little different. But um, I was the only guy doing tuck knees on the team.
Ah, okay. Let's dig into that because part of the reason why we chose this photo is because it just like elicits such I don't know, just so much love from the snowboard community. And it does have a special place, I think. And in terms of the tuck knee and the tweaking and the boning out, what were some of the tricks that were like held up on high? Like what are, like what were you winning competitions with? Or, what were the tricks of the day?
So in a half pipe competition, I don't even know if people were doing 720s yet
No, they were
in
not. In
1990.
1990, I think Craig Kelly won the world
540s.
with the 360, to be honest.
Yeah, there must have been some fives in there. But a lot of the, ungrabbed in the pipe. Um, this is the same year that 20 Tricks was filmed.
Oh,
And I remember, I sort of a tangent, but, Jeff Brush and I we're the first two to film for that movie. We didn't even know what it was, right?
yeah.
And it's done by these guys, Tonar Productions, like totally gnarly productions.
Tonar, yes.
And so, and we did it at the Breck Pipe. And um, I just did like a backside air, and I had a pretty good backside air at the time, and I did a stale fish because I was the first one to do, and then Jeff did a couple tricks, and then later I saw Rankwood doing like fakey 360s grabbing. I was like, "Whoa, you did cool
Whoa.
stuff!" Like I thought this was like a how-to, not like the dopest tricks.
Not do the
And
sickest
so
tricks.
at the time, and they weren't big,
Yeah.
but at the time that was kind of pushing the boundaries. So, you
Okay.
sort of reel it back to what pipes and what we were going to. People are probably still doing J tears. Some there's still a bunch of hand plant and Elgario variations. Um, the air to fakies and all that stuff. No one's doing McTwists.
Yeah.
Not yet. Maybe the next year they started happening, but I'm pretty sure there's some fives in there. You know,
Mhm.
or maybe you're right, Trish. Maybe
I
it's
don't know. I
360s that
watched
was
a
winning.
video from 1990 Worlds, and like Eric Webster did a frontside 540 and fell on it, and then like Craig Kelly dropped in, and I'm pretty sure he won with back-to-back threes.
Mm.
Um, but
Like, he's
maybe it
like, "I'm
was
gonna stay consistent. I'm gonna do the
well because it was
threes,"
like
and
2 runs,
yeah.
like so maybe there were fives getting thrown. There were definitely fives being like tried and done, but they weren't like winning competitions yet because you had to land it twice.
Yeah, as Tirons combined was often the format, like, the pipe quality wasn't great. They're all hand dug, and sometimes they just looked like a driveway had been pushed up.
Yeah, a
Uh,
bowl. Yeah.
yeah, so, but tweaking was big. That was the thing, and it was definitely an era that was feeding off of all the images you saw in skateboarding, and so those guys were tweaking everything from hand plants to their airs. And, we had binding setups and boots were soft, and the straps were in a different placement than, a lot of them are today. So you could, you could bone everything out and tweak pretty hard.
Yeah, do you remember that 1990 freestyle binding coming out and that changing the way that you rode, or it was just, like, all the same evolution?
Or it was just
No,
good marketing.
no, it changed the way we rode because,
Okay.
prior to the, before that binding, and there were several iterations of that binding with different high backs, the yellow high backs, the white ones, etc. But I think I might be on the ones with the black high back. But,
Mm.
before that with Burton, they had those Darth Vader bindings. I can't remember what they're called. We just call them the Vader bindings because they
Yeah.
were just giant and they were like a cast. It was kinda like,
Yeah.
if you broke your foot and you got a boot, that's what it was.
Totally.
And so and then everyone started to grind them away to sort of like, "Oh, we need some lateral flexibility." And so for Burton, it was Darth Vader bindings versus the Sims, their freestyle binding or whatever it was called that was completely different. You couldn't compare the two. So Burton was catching up essentially to what Sims was doing.
Yeah.
And so, for us as Burton riders, yes, big time game changer. But we didn't stop there. we got the bindings in and we would hit them we'd travel with Dremels and we would grind those things on the road
Oh.
and, change the profiles of them, change the high backs, move straps around, cut the straps down. So being on the team, you got the first look of every product before it hit market, including stuff that never made it. And, you get a box of 6 or 7 different straps and they're all completely different. And then we would tweak on them further to see what we liked. And then, ultimately they go back and look at it and decide what to take to market the following season.
Did that
So
help?
lots of work.
Yeah. Was that your first foray into product development, would you say?
It was. And you had, when you have someone to sort of look up to and follow like Craig, because he was so entrenched in product, we're always looking at what's he doing. Is that interesting to me? And there was certain stuff that he did that nobody else did. Like he put tongues on, he would like attach tongues into his ankle strap, and none of us did that. Maybe Doc
Why
Boy
did he
did,
do
but
that? Was it to
I don't know.
disperse the pressure?
Probably a combination of,
Yeah.
pain mitigation
Yeah.
and, some other performance thing. But for us, we were just like, no, that's not what I need.
Yeah.
And then some people would take tongues of ski boots and they would put them inside inside between the liner and their outer boot to create a little bit more rigidity there. So, everyone had their own thing, but yeah, to enter a product room with Craig and to sit with, the product team and Jake fed on that. He really wanted people. It was a requirement in our contracts was to provide feedback, product feedback. And so, every month I would send in my feedback report and fax it to him or mail it to him or whatever. And it was cool. It was cool to get in there and figure out, how does this work? And, maybe your ideas, even if they're good, they don't fit into the company profile and what they're trying to do that year. So you have to wait.
Yeah. You talked a little bit, you and I had a conversation and you were saying your bindings, like the plastic base plate would always crack under your feet, but that was a little bit of the secret sauce and you'd ride them for a few weeks or whatever, and it would let you tweak a little bit more, bone out a little bit radder.
Yeah, that's true. So there was a lot of speculation over whether I rode with like my straps were loose or my boots are untied, or, and
Yeah.
I just never said anything. But what would really happen is those base plates would break in the heel. And so if you think about the 5-hole pattern that used to exist, the back 2 holes, it would crack there. And because, all bindings kind of flex in the heel when you turn and torque on them enough, and those things would just snap. And they generally snap in a day. And so you would
Crazy.
only be able to ride a set of bindings for a few weeks before they became like unsafe. But once they broke, you could tweak a little harder. So that particular shot, there's a cant on my back foot too. It's a pretty heavy cant. I can't remember the degree. That one looks like a lot. That helped. That definitely helped.
Oh, yeah. Cants. We were remembering cants during our binding episode, and
It didn't make the edit.
Freestylers used to wear cans or use cans.
Everybody wore cans. Not everybody, but they were like for racing, for getting the extra carb, and then for
racing.
like tweaking for like the Craig knee, like the knock knee like vibe, right? Or
Craig
being able to
leg,
like get your Craig leg to get your, your freaking knees so you're bored.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think the Craig leg thing, it was a piece of it, because you could, and Burton had 2 sizes of cants. I think, I'm going to make up numbers. So let's say one was 5 degrees and one was a lot more.
Yeah.
Some people would ride double cants to really get the both knees together, but that was, from his smooth groove days, essentially. Everybody looked at his style, and that was a signature of his, a trademark of his, and everyone wanted to do that. And not everybody's body was designed that way. So the cants help make it happen.
So amazing.
That's amazing.
Talking about like that Burton team, I mean, you're from Southern Vermont. Like, how did you get on the team, and what did it mean to like make the A team of Burton at that time?
It was huge. So, I was a barfoot rider in high school, coming out of high school. And then in the 88 World Cup time trials, they were called, in Purgatory. I went out there, with the Barfoot team. I was allowed to sleep on the floor of the condo.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
What an
right. Which
honor.
was a benefit. That was
Yeah.
great.
Hell yeah.
No travel money, very little sponsorship support. Just I'm there, and my the guy I shared my locker with in high school, this guy Steve Hall, um, was a Burton guy. His brother was a Burton guy. Greg Hall was early Burton team. Noah Brandon was a Burton guy, good friend.
Yeah.
And we're riding the pipe, and Steve came up to me while I was just sessioning the pipe or practicing before contest day, and he goes, "Hey, Jake just asked me to ask you if you'd like to ride for Burton." I was like, "Shut up, man." And he's like, "No, I'm serious." I was like, "Steve, there's nothing I would rather do than ride
Of
for
course.
Burton." And he's like, "All right, I'll tell him." And I'd never spoken to Jake, and even then, I think I got a follow up from John Yuska, who was a team manager at the time. Um, so that was the entry point. And I remember all of a sudden, going from like a product flow with Chuck Direct, and Chuck Barfoot's just an amazing person
Yeah.
and good energy, and I like the brand and all that. Till all of a sudden now Burton, and I have this long contract, and I'm 18
It's like
years
the big
old, and
boy
I'm
situation.
yeah, I'm like, why do I have to have all these contract? Like, there's a lot of pages and a lot of legal words, and I don't understand. You're just going to give me one pair of boots,
Yeah.
one board, one binding,
You went from
and
loose to like tight.
and a jacket. You're right. I had to buy
Yeah.
my pants.
You bought
You
them.
know.
Wow. Interesting.
So yeah. And then I borrowed my race boards. From Jenny Hahn every weekend. So I actually had like newer equipment. So I'd borrow a race board on Friday, I'd race it on Saturday, Sunday, I'd give it back to her. And then I had a Mystery Air was my board. And so after that season went really well, I got promoted. I won the New England Cup, and then I got promoted to the Burton A team. And so to sort of, go from, no passing, getting picked up
Yeah.
on the side of the pipe to a year later, was epic. It was for me. It was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy, because now I don't have to work on the farm all summer to save up enough money. Like, I can actually snowboard in the summer and get better. I
Yeah.
get a lot more product. I have a travel budget, which never even really occurred to me how much money they would allow you to spend with travel.
Yeah.
Um, and I was making, I was very small salary, but at least I was
It
between
was a
that and prize
salary.
money and photo incentives and prize match and all that stuff. Um, I could survive. I could survive the winter, and you sell your old gear and you move on to the next one. So it was, like a dream.
Yeah.
Can I ask, what are we talking? Travel budge. What'd they give you? Do you remember?
There was
Like
no
maybe the
number.
first year? Oh, they were just
Oh,
like,
send your receipts
spend.
in.
There
Huh.
was no,
Okay.
there was no number. And so, in the year, like when this photo was taken, Paul Alden would travel with us, and he would give us a per diem. So he'd have this wad of hundreds, like a real, like, big wad.
Wild.
And so it's like you get your money per day or whatever, and you go out and you eat. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough to survive.
Yeah.
Um, Travel flights were all prearranged. Paul and the team, they're like a handler. So
Yeah.
you were being shepherded around. This is the condo. Everyone races, grabs beds. Contest is the next day. It was very like a tour guide. Was sort of
Like
carrying you
on
around.
band. Yeah. Like a band
Yeah, it's kind of
manager.
like your first trip to Japan. If you remember that, that's what it was like for us everywhere, even in the States. And so that's how it started. If you roll it back and you try to think, how much every trip really costs, maybe it was like 30 grand a year in travel per team rider without throwing
Right.
crazy stuff into the mix.
Yeah.
But, you're never really going home. You're always on the
Nope.
road. You're going somewhere, lots of international travel.
And they got you guys a coach, right? Like, I did not realize Jerry Masterpool, who went on to start Cross
Cross
M, that
M.
all our friends, like huge race team with Jeremy Jones and all those guys, he was your coach for a while, right?
Yeah, he started with us. So I don't know how they found Jerry, but they decide after the New England Cup year, the win, they moved us to Tahoe. And so they got us
Yeah.
a house in Tahoe Donner, two houses. Then we had season passes for Boreal, and that's where we were training. And so we meet Jerry, he shows up, he never changed his look. He had the long hair. He had the
He had the
goatee.
duster, like the Australian
trench coat. Yeah.
He had that. He had this old like dually crew cab Ford F-350 that he drove
All those
around.
coaches
He's
were
always
such
spit and
fucking
chew.
characters.
Oh, he was spit and chew. And, he gave us the Cross M stickers at the time, and no one really asked. Everybody put them on their boards because we were just kind of following the routine. And, it was like every day you're supposed to get up and run for 20-minute run.
Oh,
And then
damn.
you're supposed to do like a bunch of core exercises. Some people weren't touching that stuff. Some people were just doing 16-ounce curls. And then we would go on the hill and you set gates and we're running and training and doing all this stuff. And, be a powder day and we're running gates. And there was some dry land training sessions that were like group, that was like gym class.
Oh my gosh.
You're like, Jeff Rushy's holding my feet while I'm doing sit-ups. That's what I'm picturing.
No joke. And very different, for the time. And so we went to the first event, which was in Blackcomb.
Yeah.
And in the racing events, which was the only thing Jerry had impact on, I think there was 11 of us on the team. All 11 were in the top 14.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We like smoked everybody. Yeah. And so it worked big time. But he was a race coach, and so, and he worked on technique, and he had to this day, I think of some of his training techniques that were very unorthodox. And I just love it. I'm like, that was, it's like Rocky IV shit. It was great.
Oh, yeah.
Rocky IV was in Russia, right? Is that the right one?
I think
Whatever
so.
the one where he's like
You're
carrying
asking
logs through the
wrong
snow.
girls.
I don't know, man. It was so good.
So no love was getting put into freestyle in terms of like, where's the freestyle coach?
Wait, and what is this, like 92, 90? What year is this? 90,
That's the
90?
same year that picture's taken.
Oh, 90. Okay, cool.
That's that season. And you get to the end of the season and then people are like, I'm going to specialize. Brushy's like, I'm not racing anymore. I'm just going to do freestyle. Keith was like, nope. Craig was like, I want to still compete for the overall, but he was starting to sway the other way. And, ultimately, like, through the next couple of years, I decided I was going to quit racing. And Jerry was like, no, don't do it.
Because were you world champion for
North
for
American
Alpine?
champion?
Okay.
Yeah. And so yeah, Jerry was like, don't quit. I told Jake, I was like, I had crashed in a race, like in a Super G, and blew out my shoulder, and I was sliding with it out, and I stopped, I put it back in, and I was like, all right, I've got to get this repaired. And I rode down to Jake, who was at the finish, because he was always at the finish. And I was like, well, Jake, that was the last time I put on hard boots in my life. And he's like, man, we have a lot of freestylers in America. We really need some racers. And I was like, well, I'm not your racer. And then I just, went and got surgery, and I never raced. I never did it again. And that was at the time, that was a Burton. They wanted the balance, right? And Jake was, he was competitive in all senses, and he wanted to win the racing too.
Yeah, that it feels like a bit of a watershed year then, because it was sort of when that change was happening and freestyle was sort of gonna win almost in terms of this racing freestyle battle. It feels like maybe it's this year, these couple years, where people are like feeling torn inside, and seeing. How were you thinking about freestyle? Were you like, it seems more fun, or because it's competitive in his own way,
I mean, freestyle was cooler, 100%, and I was really into photographs, and I liked working with photographers, and I think I've gotten, 2 photos on race boards ever that I'm like, oh, those are cool.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
A few more have shown up from even that day with the tuck knee. And so but I like doing it all. I really enjoyed the diversity and the challenge of competing in all disciplines. But once too many people quit competing in all disciplines, it became like, this isn't really the scene I want, I'm going to sort of lean in a different direction, and not having to go, travel the world with a board bag that has 4 race boards, 2 freestyle boards, 2 sets of bindings, 2 sets of boots. I mean, the weight of that bag alone was crazy.
With no wheels, by the way.
No wheels. And it's like, oh yeah, figure out how to get on the trains by
Yeah.
yourself, you know? So it was harder.
That's your
And
dry
then you
land
would see,
training.
yeah, and then you'd see the other guys that are showing up with, you know,
Aboard.
almost nothing. Yeah, they got two Kelly Airs,
Yeah.
and they're just, you know, they could wear their boots on the plane if they wanted to. And so it was, for me, it was a great, the day I quit racing, I was like, I didn't miss it. And, you know, I worked hard at it. And, you know, you're just running
And you
into
were
a world
good
of
at it.
specialization. I was pretty good at it. And
Yeah.
but I really enjoyed the freestyle. And then you also have to think about too, that the pipe scene was evolving. It was getting good. It went from being a novelty. You know, those early pipes that you see were awful. They're
Yeah.
just, it literally looks like a
Lumps.
driveway kicker, you know?
Yeah,
They're
like
just
a
not.
mound of snow and a flat bottom.
True.
And then, you know, Stratton sort of changed things, but they didn't maintain those pipes. They weren't in very many places. And then they started to appear more and more often. And so, you know, I'm very much a product of my environment. You put more pipes around me, I want to ride more pipes.
Yeah.
If it's just a flat hill with nothing to do, I guess throw some gates up. Let's run through some gates. And it was the old days with long gates, you know, they're not the
Yeah.
stubbies. So you're actually like,
Bashing
I thought it was cooler with the longer gates, you
Yeah.
know,
Tall
and gates
pole,
are
yeah.
whipping through. It's cool. Sort of cool.
Yeah.
I was curious about kind of back to the photo and this idea of like tuck knees and tweaking and that be such a marker of the era. Who was ruling it on the scene?
Yeah. So I was trying to think about that before the call. So, you know, Brush always had this, this power, like pop, power, and tweak. He had it all. And he's got the dreads flying. And so everything that he was
Style.
doing was
Mhm.
sort of, you know, viewed as being incredible. Adam Merriman was so flexible, um, with his, like, I don't know if it was hips, knees, or ankles or everything together, but he could do, you know, it doesn't matter if it was crooked cops or tuck knees or whatever, he could tweak all over. And his, you know, you think about the way he would bone out a millionaire. It
Yeah.
was, he was laying on the board, you know? Um, Noah Brandon was really good at a few things. There's a really great covers, or a really cool cover of Noah from the Stratton Pipe, but there was other photos from that day that didn't get run that were so sick with him doing crooked cops.
Yeah.
And then Jimmy Halapoff. I remember Jimmy
Oh,
was like
yeah.
crazy how flexible he was. So he was, you know, the Tahoe version of Adam in the sense that he could tweak really hard. And there's a long list, I'm sure, of people I'm not
But
thinking
also,
of.
like, tall guy style, you and Jimmy Halapoff are tall guys. A lot of I don't know,
Totally.
like, when you
I
look
was
at
thinking
taller
Adam is
snowboarders.
too.
Is he? Yeah, yeah, was he? Yeah.
Adam was tall. Yeah.
But, like, Brush and those guys are, like, more compact, and I feel like it's just easier to be, like, tweaky at or look good on a snowboard, and sometimes with tall guys, like, you guys have good style, but, you know, some people look really tall.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, I'm 6'1", and I think they're probably similar heights, you know, but, um, yeah, you didn't see a lot of, you know, Brush, I guess, was an exception, but, um, it just, you know, as I said earlier, it was a time when that was the tricks, you know,
Yeah.
before the spins got good. People were spinning,
Yeah.
but they were hectic. They
Not
weren't,
grabbing.
there
Yeah.
was nothing pretty about the way these spins were going down, right? They were just whipping them around, and I think they looked terrible at the time. So, you know, it's nice to see them now because they're incredible what they do today.
Yeah, they're, like, grabbing and spinning and flipping.
Grab a couple times, a couple ways.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah,
looked at, like, some old photos that like, Jen shared a photo from the Stratton Pipe on, like, me on the Sims, and I'm like, "Damn, I didn't know I could bend my legs like that." But it's really just, like, the boots were basically so soft, you could, like, pull the board up and be like, "Here's my lean," you know, like
Yeah.
it's true. Yeah, I mean the boots were so soft, and then, you know, you throw the fact the airs aren't that big. Everything's
Yeah.
got to be quick, so it's sometimes jerky.
You're like
Um, yeah, and then the bindings, you know, you think about the binding, the ankle strap positioning. A lot of people's positioning is up towards the high back hole. The higher you are, the more it sets you into the heel cup, the more control you have, but the less tweaking you have. If you cycle those or move those down towards the front of the base plate, now
Yeah.
you've got all this freedom in the ankle. and you throw the soft boots in there, all those combinations, and just the desire, like to do it. Everyone's working on it. So, um, that's a product of the era.
Yeah, it's like how you all were honing your individuality is like through these, through tweaking in different ways.
And like
Yeah.
practicing on the trampolines for the tramp bash.
Oh yeah.
Yes, the trampoline era was unique, but it helped,
Yeah.
and people would jump on trampolines with their boards
You got
and
to tape the
tweak
edges so you don't
tape the edges,
slide
and
through
you're
the.
tweaking your boards, and you basically learn all the stuff. So you,
Yeah.
you just get your
Yeah.
air awareness figured out, and then you take it to the snow. Um, but yeah, that helped, and I just remember I was always stretching my ankles. It seemed when I was sitting like doing nothing, I would be moving my feet in ways that just got my ankles loose. And so, um, it's the combination. It's just a desire. Everyone just thought it was cool. When something's
Yeah.
cool, everyone jumps on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
I wanted to ask a bit about how you see this period because it's so, I don't know, you can feel such a collective yearning and kind of hearkening back to it now. Like if we post something from this era on our Instagram or whatever, people just chime in like that was real snowboarding. You just feel the love for it. Do you think that's just
We old?
straight nostalgia, or do you think what was going on that you see has was laying the groundwork for now? Like where is it in the arc? Like what value does it hold, that period?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple things. One, it was an attainable aspiration that it wasn't that far away from the everyday person, even though it's a season away, maybe. Um, and then the media that was being distributed, right? So you get these magazines that people are waiting for, and then they just comb through it and they pass it around. They read it like crazy, like they recite so that everything's committed to memory.
Yeah.
The videos weren't prolific, like there wasn't a ton of them. There were some
Yeah.
great ones, but there was a variety in storytelling there. There was travel, there was narration at times, there's
Yeah.
all these things that wasn't just hitting you with trick, 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 trick. And so I think it was really easy for people to and it was fresh and young, and skiing was going through a period where it was just kind of lost
Yeah.
and uninspiring to youth. So you take all those things in there, and then you fast forward 35 years or whatever it is, and those people still remember it, and they're like, what, that was great. That was really good times. I loved it. Best times of their life.
Yeah.
And those further generations are having the same versions of what this '90s generation had, but they're just going to have it in a different way, and their time will come where they'll celebrate it.
Do you think
Yeah.
young people then don't feel the same? Like, do your kids look at those photos and go like, fuck, that's cool, Dad?
Well, my kids are, my son's 13, my daughter's 10.
Okay, so they're a bit
So
young to.
it's a little on the young side, but it's starting to, I think my son is starting to figure it out a little bit
Yeah.
and think it's cool. And now they're both into snowboarding, and they go quite a bit. So it's starting to click a little bit. Um, and it is, some of the stuff that we did it's still relatable. You really think about it. You
Yeah.
watch an Olympic run or, any of the big stuff that's going on. It's not very relatable. It's incredible.
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
it's actually unbelievable how big, how smooth, how perfectly they land in a half pipe and just hunt for more speed. It's unbelievable. I love it.
Yeah.
For a little while. And then you're like, all right, I've seen enough. I'm good. I'm gonna just
Yeah.
go do my thing.
Yeah.
And so, I think that the nostalgia stuff, it's nice to see that there's a group of people that really care about it. And whether it's, collectors of products or just people online and looking at photos, I think it's really cool. And I've always felt that way myself, about the first generation snowboarders, the forefathers of the first gen guys like Terry and that long list of people that I looked up to in my first magazines. So,
Yeah.
I think it's cool that people, look at the 90s or even the later generations and feel the same way.
I feel like it's more than nostalgia because I think that you guys were, I don't know, just, I mean, yeah, you're inspired by what was going on in skateboarding, but you're sort of setting up what good style was going to be, really.
I mean, yes, and I think that at least with me, my relationships with photographers were very strong. They were some of my to this day very good friends, and I just love the timelessness of photos. Growing up with magazines, so I was into
Yeah.
that more than video. I
Yeah.
never tried for videos ever. I never spent more than 3 days on a video part in my life, um, and so and the photo side of it, getting something that you're like, "That was a good one. That was a banger," um, was something that I was just I was just into it. And so I think there's probably people that felt that same way and we did a good job at times. And
Yeah.
so those photos, some of them hold up. That was sort of the goal. I was like, what photos hold up?
Yeah.
Like really hold up? Like 50 years from now, is this a
Yeah.
cool photo? Like, how do you get to that? And that was sort of the lens I was looking through. Because when I got I had a lot of photos around, and so I'd get photos around. I look at some of them, I was like, "Geez, really? All right,
Yeah.
photo incentive, take the money, but like, and then just ignore it." And so, but when you get the one, that
Yeah.
meant a lot to me, and so that stuff does hold the test of time.
Cool
And
shit is still cool. It stands the test.
When you were doing that trick, did you know that like, kinda how you're saying, like, "Oh, this is a banger." Did you feel that in the moment with that photo? Yeah, okay.
every time for me,
Yeah.
I knew before the photo was going to be taken that this one is gonna be the one if nobody screws up.
Like "Oh, my lens cap was
I
on.
was
Sorry,
Snowcat
bro."
driver, play your role. Yeah.
I just knew, and then you get the surprise, like, that's a surprise, the snowcat driver. But
Beautiful.
I knew when I did my role, my part, every time. And
Yeah.
so, this is film days. There's a lot of things that can go
Yeah.
sideways after that. Was it out of focus? Did the film get lost? Did the processor screw it up?
Yeah.
I would hear that, one line I would hear from photographers is like, "Oh, the lab screwed up the film." And later in
You're
life, I'm
like,
like, "Did
"Oh."
they?
You're
Did
like,
they? Or
mm.
did you just miss it and you blame the lab? Like, what happened?" So,
Right.
um, but I was, I shot some photos myself, and at times, and I was pretty good at flipping the perspective in my mind to know what was working. And something that I did that others that maybe didn't do was I was trying to do whatever was most appropriate to get the best shot. I wasn't trying to do the raddest thing off
Right.
that jump, and
Yeah.
hopefully they catch it, because sometimes the raddest thing doesn't look good in
Look good.
photographs. Might look good in video,
Yeah.
but it
What
doesn't look
was
good in photographs.
the relationship with Rod Walker? Like, what was that? Because, he was a skier. It felt like he was hired to shoot catalog stuff, but did he and like we were kinda talking about earlier, like, a lot of our snowboard photographers are still in the scene or adjacent or, like, had a much longer career in it, and it looks like Rod Walker, went on to shoot commercially and do other things and wasn't as invested, obviously, in the scene.
Yeah, so Rod was awesome. My first official Burton photo shoot was in Southern Colorado with Rod, Betsy Shaw, and Noah Brandon.
Oh.
And we rode the sand dunes, and we did,
Oh, yeah.
hiked some stuff in Ouray, and we did lifestyle shoots, and we got a couple of good ones. But Rod had this really great energy about him, and he was already established as this iconic Burton photographer, at least like in Trevor Graves' eyes. And when I would come home from the trips, he'd like, "Tell me about Rod. What would Rod do?
Oh,
How did Rod?" The one thing I anchored on was Rod is engaging and motivating. Like he would get excited if you did something that looked really good for him, and he makes you want to walk back up there and do it again,
Yeah.
and do
Gave you
more.
some
And so
feedback.
there was, yeah, so that carried
Yeah.
forward. And that was one of the big messages I gave Trevor. And he obviously did great. So,
He did
but
you're welcome.
okay.
Rod, yeah, yeah. Um, and then Rod only but then he sort of vanished. I don't know what happened. Like,
Ooh, okay,
did the other
okay. Let me
photographer
raise my
sneak
hand
in
here.
and steal his job? Mhm.
So, I have some conjecture, from Trevor. He was saying, that there was something that went down where Burton or JDK, their agency, he wasn't sure which, lost some like a FedEx package with a bunch of Rod Walker's photos the slides. And so Rod Walker sued Burton for the damages, basically like the money he'd be missing out on for future sales of the photos. And he said something like, I think he thought it was like $10,000. And so Burton settled and like gave him the money. And like
Never another
he never
job.
worked in snowboarding again. And so Trevor was sort of saying, like, I learned a lot by watching that happen, because I learned as a photographer, like, basically, like, it's all business development, it's all relationships, and you might have gotten 10 grand, but now you're kind of burned some bridges. And so I don't know how 100% accurate that is, but that's like through Trevor's eyes, that's sort of what he saw as like a moment when, like, oh, where's Walker these days? Did you hear
That
about
makes
that,
a lot
Jason,
of sense.
ever?
I did actually. Now I'm remembering that story.
Yeah,
And I don't remember what year or what batch of photos, but
curious.
um, yeah, because it's funny. Even the ones from this particular shoot is I don't know who has them. I have
Yeah.
dupes. Trevor.
Uh,
Trevor was. Whenever they made dupes, they sent them to Trevor's lab. So
Yeah.
then Trevor would make extras and send me copies, and we lived
huh.
not far from each other. So when I would see him, he's like, "Hey, I made you some dupes." So I have, sleeves of dupes from various images or various shoots from various photographers, that I probably shouldn't have, but I do. I have them.
Interesting.
But
I
the
do
but
too.
the originals, you do too, right? He was really good
From
at sharing
Trevor.
that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he worked at the lab, and then he would just work late night and
Yeah.
and save us stuff. So um, I guess he burned the bridge.
Maybe. I don't know if he sees it
Whoopsie
that way, but I think
whoopsie.
that's pretty interesting. Hey, can we talk about what you're wearing in the image?
Pretty
There's
dope, huh?
some yellow pants.
The
I see
Yellow
some.
the
pants were
the mint, the turquoise, the purple, the yellow, like that era was if I can't believe it was 1 year. It felt like 6, didn't it?
It was such a colorful period.
It was colorful, and everyone else had colors going too.
Yeah.
No,
So
yeah.
so before we talk about my stuff, I think Kemper had
Oh, they were
the
like
sun
fluorescent green.
ice.
Oh,
They had that sun
yeah.
ice deal. So that was
So Sun
colorful,
Ice was
more
an
colorful.
a ski apparel company that
Ski
they
apparel company, and
partnered
then they
with or
put a
something?
patch. Yeah, they put a patch
Oh,
on the jackets and stuff. So it was very bright green and
Green
pink neon,
and
yeah.
black.
and some patterns, I think.
Yeah.
Um, Bad Boy Club
Oh,
had the one
yeah.
pieces, maybe getting towards the end of that, right? So they had some crazy stuff with
And, like,
Zavo
all over
and Victor.
print, right? With,
Mhm.
like, faces and yeah, okay.
Mhm.
Sims had the one piece.
The fluorescent green
This
tie-dye
girl.
one piece. I had a
There was
black and purple one, but
Oh, you did? Let's
yeah.
resurface those images.
that's a rare one because there was the green one, there was the orange
Orange?
one, and it
Yeah.
was maybe pink.
Tie-dye?
These things were beyond.
Yeah.
And so and that all might have been a year prior, I'm not sure, but so the colors were it. Craig, coming out of the look pant era,
Oh, right.
um, and Craig was into the yellow pants because they photographed really well.
Yeah.
And the year prior was yellow pants, red jacket.
Red jacket, yeah.
And then they introduced these colors. Um, we didn't get to pick our colors
Of course
No.
not.
as riders. You got sent your stuff, and you were,
This is what you're
and
wearing.
so this is it. I think Jeff had the black jacket with that purple sort of print. It was kind of
Yeah.
cool. Only Jeff was given that. None of us could ride it because that was the one that Jeff was going to be given.
Right.
So this is what I was awarded. Like I said, I was happy to be there. So,
I back it. I back the
I had
kit.
I had that jacket. Yeah. I think I had that
so
jacket and the matching purple pants, which was a bit too matchy matchy for me, but
Apparently
it's
it
how it
wasn't.
ended up. It's how it ended up.
yeah, it worked. I think looking back, the hat, the
It
Oakley
adds to it.
shades, and everything. Everything sort of lines up.
It's the time, it was like on point.
It's funny too. It's like even the buckles on the bindings are sort of reminiscent of ski boots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, you think about the old, Langs and Technicas and
The
stuff like that with the bright, they'd have those bright buckles. So that was
Yeah, the
a little
pop
bit of
color
skiing still
buckles.
alive. Hmm.
Yeah. Hey, did you have like a style icon that you were sort of looking at within snowboarding or not, where you were like trying to emulate yourself or just were like, I like what that person's about?
Hmm. Of course. Terry Kidwell,
Oh,
top of
Kiddo,
the
cool.
yeah.
list.
Hell yeah.
So the guys I looked up to tremendously for style, it was a lot of the Sims guys from before.
Yeah.
So when Craig was there, it was Terry, it was Sean Palmer, it was Craig Kelly. Um, Brush obviously was somebody we looked up to, but we were both from Vermont and we
Peers.
competed together a lot. And he got pulled out of Vermont first. So he would travel and come back and give us all the insights as to what was happening around the world. Um, those were those were my those were my people that I looked up to big time. I had a number of other people that I looked up to for various different reasons. Like, oh, they've handled themselves well, or that's a smart business person, or this is these are, or don't do that.
Yeah. The
You'd see things that are
anti-icons.
like, ooh, yeah,
Yeah.
don't sue Burton for the slides.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
you would learn those things. But I used it as just a light guide, and not somebody, because I realized that you don't want to try to be the backup, player, and copy someone else entirely, and it was kind of cool to be on the team with Craig and to, be around him so much and have your like mega hero right there.
Yeah.
But you're like, I've got to find my own scene. I can't just try to be you and wait for you to not, to give up the seat. You're not going to, I was like, Craig's not going to give up the seat.
Well, that's
So,
what was so cool about that era too, is like it's like Noah Brandon, Craig Kelly, Duck Boy, uh, Jacoby, you, Brushy, like everybody had when you think all those names, they all have a very distinct style, whether they're all doing a sailfish or like a tuckney or whatever. It's like really there nobody's doing it the same way. And I think that's a little bit
mhm.
about that and like relatable, like, the tricks were relatable for that time, but also you could do it you could be the Jason Ford and the Noah Brandon were all side by side on the same team doing it their own way, and there's space for that. It was cool.
And it was an era where people would, call it out that they're going to do a certain trick a certain way.
Yeah.
They would call names. Um,
Hmm.
and it's fun to see that style continue. It's funny this weekend, Palmer was there and
Yeah.
I'm following him down the hill. We rode the lift together and I'm going down. I pull my
Fun.
phone out, I start videoing because I'm just like, those turns he does are so
It's
him.
Palmer.
No one else does them like that. Right. And then, I'm like, I'm following you, man, and it was really fun to see because I still have um, that appreciation. And, it sort of takes me way back to think like, yeah, these are still kind of my heroes. And even though we
Yeah.
compete together and know each other forever, um, I still love it.
Yeah,
That's beautiful.
it's cool.
What talk a little bit about you were saying you were hinting at how you were really into photography and you found your way or your voice as a pro snowboarder of like how I want to show up is through going on these editorial trips or just getting rad imagery because you're telling me you're like I want to get cover shots. That's how I want to be a pro. Like talk a little bit about your journey there, how you kind of like found your way or shaped your destiny in a way.
I learned pretty fast that I didn't want to be dressed and marketed a way that wasn't me. I wanted to have some control over how I was portrayed. And in order to help with that, I was like, let me take the reins. So I pitched to Burton one year, let me set up a photo shoot. Let me handle it. Let me hire my friend. Let me hire Trevor Graves. Let me coordinate where we're going to go and the dates. Let me build the crew. I'll invite the magazines and we're going to create an editorial that captures all the photos you're looking for. And so I set up something in Colorado. It was Noah Brandon and I. Craig agreed to come, which was kind of a shock because he wasn't a big fan of Colorado in general.
Hmm.
He never really liked the snowpack. So Craig showed up, Trevor shot it, and then Lee Crane was the writer for Transworld. So we did a Transworld story. And we did a Colorado road trip. We did all this stuff. Craig and I ended up on the cover of Transworld. Craig got an incredible, that big, the gun ad where he's doing that huge power turn and they have like a gun in the photo. That was from that trip. Like we did really well. We got a lot of good stuff. And we got a speeding ticket that was in the video Stream of Conscious. So I had a video camera. So we have all these things, and it came out of it, and I was like, "Ooh, that works a lot better." And I had realized this the year prior before I had made the pitch to Burton. I was at a snowboard contest at Stowe, and the pipe was terrible. It just wasn't good. And so we're all going to ride bad, and it's going to look stupid, and then someone's going to win some money, but it's going to be lame. And so I grabbed Trevor and I said, let's like go shoot. Let's bail on the contest and go shoot. And we went, and it was kind of foggy and the snow wasn't great, but I got a cover on Snowboarder from that day. And I was like, huh, interesting. I skipped the contest and I go get a cover shot. What's more valuable? And so that sort of got my wheels turning, right? And so we started to do that more and more often. And, for me, we got we figured it out. I moved to Southern California in 1990. So I was visiting the magazines. I was surfing with those guys. They were my friends. And so I was seeing what was going on, what they were interested in. And there's no doubt that it helped me with my coverage.
Was that your first cover shot, the one from Stowe?
On a major mag, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Trevor
that
was
one, and
talking a
then
bit about that trip to Colorado, and he was saying that, like, when you guys got pulled over and Craig was driving and
I
he
was
was
driving.
oh, you were driving? Did you he
Yeah.
said something about how Craig was like, "Hey, you want a donut?" to the cop, and the cop did not know he was being made fun of at all. He was like, "No, thanks. I just put a chew in." And just, like, walked away like, that young man is so nice."
Yep. Yeah, that is more or less what happened. And yeah, that clips and scream of consciousness. And
Oh, I gotta
um
resurface that.
yeah, and Lee's like, Craig, you got big balls. He's like, what is he gonna do? Spit some chew on me? Was his
True,
comment back.
It's like,
true.
Jason's already paying for the speeding ticket, so we're good.
Yeah, I didn't get that
Invoice the
reimbursed.
travel budge, the Burton travel budge.
Thank you.
Jason, thank you so much. That was so fun. We gotta keep these stories alive and get them down so that AI knows what they're talking about when they when they scrape this later for information on
Yeah.
the history of our sport.
Yeah, it's really cool what you guys are doing. So, keep it
Thank
up.
you.
And, there's a lot of really fun stuff that happened before everything was online. And then,
Yeah.
sort of, there's just like, there's so much volume of stuff right now that it kind of loses the impact. And I
Yeah.
really appreciate the days of editing where somebody made a decision, and maybe the decision was you didn't make the cut, but they made a decision and they stood by it. And, it was,
Yeah.
more times than not, it was a good decision. So I like
Yeah.
that. So keep it up. And I like what you guys are doing.